Everyone at the cafe believed Emily Carter was waiting for her life to begin. She sat by the window each morning in a quiet Boston neighborhood, a simple woman with a calm face, sipping black coffee. Her laptop closed like it had nothing important. Inside, two strangers, she looked unemployed. To her husband, she looked unmotivated. And to the man who would soon walk out of her life, she looked like a burden he had outgrown. Daniel Carter once thought marrying Emily was the smartest decision he ever made. She was steady where he was restless, gentle where he was sharp. They met through friends, fell into long conversations, and built a relationship that felt peaceful. Emily never chased attention, she listened. Daniel loved that about her hat. First, it made him feel important, like the leader, like the one with direction. He worked in corporate sales, living for targets, titles, and approval. Emily supported him without complaint, cheering for every win, calming him after every loss. After marriage, Emily left her office job. Not because Daniel asked her to, but because she wanted control over her time. She didn't announce her plans or seek permission. She simply started working quietly from home. She built digital projects under contracts that required silence. She invested carefully. She consulted anonymously. Money came in slowly at first, then steadily, then in numbers most people only dreamed about. She tracked every dollar. She paid bills early. She never once needed Daniel's paycheck, but Daniel never noticed that at first. He asked questions. "What are you working on today?" He'd say casually. Emily would smile and answer simply, "Just work." Over time, his tone changed. Curiosity faded, replaced by doubt. He came home tired, frustrated, feeling unrecognized by his bosses, and he began looking for someone to blame. Emily, always calm and quiet, became an easy target. "You're home all day," Daniel said one evening, loosening his tie. "Must be nice." Emily looked up from her screen. "It is. I like what I do." Daniel laughed, but it wasn't kind. "You don't even have a real job." The words landed heavier than he realized. Emily didn't argue. She had learned long ago that explaining yourself to someone who had already decided your worth was useless. She kept working. She kept earning. She kept believing that love didn't require proof. The gap between them widened without either fully seeing it. Daniel compared their life to his coworkers' marriages. Their wives wore power suits, posted promotions online, spoke loudly about success. Emily stayed invisible by choice. Daniel mistook her privacy for failure. He began feeling embarrassed, especially around friends. When someone asked what Emily did, he shrugged. "She doesn't really work." Emily heard that once. She said. Nothing. The arguments grew sharper. Daniel complained about money, even though they were never short. Talked about pressure, responsibility, how everything rested on his shoulders. Emily listened, absorbing words that didn't match reality. She wanted to tell him the truth so many times. She imagined showing him her accounts, watching his face change. But each time she considered it, she remembered how little he asked, how little he seemed to want to know her beyond the version that made him comfortable. One night, after a long silence at dinner, Daniel finally said what had been building inside him for months. "I feel like I'm dragging us forward alone." Emily put her fork down slowly. "You're not." Daniel shook his head. "I am. You don't contribute. You don't push. You don't have ambition." Something broke quietly inside her. Not anger, not fear. Just a deep understanding that he had already decided who she was. And no truth would change that. The day Daniel left wasn't dramatic. It was cold. He packed a suitcase with steady hands, convinced he was doing the brave thing. "I need a partner," he said, standing by the door. "Not someone I have to carry." Emily stood in the hallway, barefoot on the hardwood floor. She looked at the man she had loved, the man who never truly saw her. "I've always carried my own weight," she said softly. Daniel didn't listen. He walked out believing he was choosing growth, believing he was escaping a woman with no future. The door closed. The house went silent. Emily didn't cry, right? Away? She walked into her home office, sat down, and opened her laptop. Numbers filled the screen. Contracts waited for her attention. Messages from clients appeared, thanking her, trusting her. She closed her eyes for a moment and breathed. She wasn't broken. She wasn't lost. She was simply alone, now with the truth still hers. Outside, Daniel told people his version of the story. That Emily didn't work. That she depended on him. That leaving was necessary. People nodded. It made sense to them. A quiet woman was easy to underestimate. Emily never corrected anyone. She focused on her work. She grew faster, stronger, more certain, and somewhere without either of them knowing, the path Daniel chose was slowly leading him back toward a truth. He was not ready to face a truth that would stop him cold when it finally caught up with him. Daniel Carter had convinced himself that leaving Emily was the smartest move he'd ever made. 6 months had passed since that quiet night when he walked out the door, suitcase in hand, voice filled with cold certainty. He told friends he felt free, lighter, finally unburdened. He had a new apartment, a new wardrobe, and a confidence that made him believe he'd won. But life, as it often does, has a way of revealing truths at the worst possible moment. One rainy afternoon, Daniel was in his downtown Chicago office, scrolling through emails and trying to focus on numbers and deals that no longer inspired him the way they once had. The office was buzzing, but his mind kept drifting to thoughts of Emily, though he refused to admit it to himself. Then, overhearing a conversation in the next cubicle, something made him freeze mid-scroll. "She's brilliant," said a voice. Quiet, no ego. Built half her portfolio without anyone knowing who she was. Daniel's heart skipped. Tea peeked around the corner. The men weren't talking about someone random. One of them glanced down at a spreadsheet, then back at the other. "Emily Carter," he said. Daniel's blood ran cold. His mind refused to process the words immediately. Emily Carter, the woman he had left. The woman he had called lazy, unambitious. Invisible was a powerhouse in the financial world. He tried to brush it off, but curiosity and panic battled within him. "Wait, that's my ex-wife, Daniel," blurted more to himself than anyone else. The men laughed at first, thinking he was joking, but Daniel's serious expression silenced them instantly. They shared screenshots, portfolio reports, contract records, every piece of evidence of her success. She had earned over $500,000 in the year since he left. Legally, quietly, powerfully, Daniel sank into his chair, stunned. Insult he had ever thrown her. Every dismissive remark about her not working hit him at once. He had walked out thinking he was carrying her through life. The truth was, she had been walking her own path the entire time. Without him, without needing him, for the first time, Daniel understood what he had lost. And it wasn't just the money or success, was the realization that he had never truly known Emily. All those years of arguing, all the nights spent feeling superior, because he thought he provided for her. He had been blind. The next weeks were a blur for him. He checked his finances obsessively, comparing them with what he had overheard about Emily. He realized that his career, his freedom, was smaller than hers. The promotions he had been chasing seemed petty. The bonuses he bragged about now felt meaningless. He had spent years trying to prove himself while she quietly built a world. He never imagined Daniel decided he needed to see her. Not for reconciliation at first, not for closure. He needed to witness the truth with his own eyes. Standing outside the familiar house he had once called home, he felt a wave of fear and longing. It had been months since he last saw her in person. Emily opened the door, calm as ever. Her presence alone made him feel small, yet drawn in, as if he had never truly left her orbit. She looked the same, but different. Strong, confident, certain. Her eyes met his. And for a moment, there was no anger, no sadness, only clarity. I didn't know, Daniel said, voice tight, hesitant. I was wrong. Emily studied him, her expression soft yet guarded. She had seen this pattern before, men realizing too late, but this time it wasn't her heart that needed protection. She had learned to guard her peace. I know, she said simply. You thought I was doing nothing. You thought I needed you to carry me. Daniel swallowed hard. I did. I thought I had to. And now I see I was wrong. Can we try again? Emily turned slightly, looking past him toward the life she had quietly built. She didn't need validation anymore. Not from him, not from anyone. Some people don't lose love, she said softly. They lose access. Daniel froze. The weight of her words hit him like a wall. All the nights he felt justified in his pride, all the moments he believed he was the savior of their marriage, suddenly crumbled into nothing. Emily didn't need him. She never had. And he had walked away thinking he was leaving someone behind, when in reality, he had left a force that could not be contained. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind rustled through the trees outside. The city hummed softly. And Daniel understood fully that the life he had chosen had stripped him of more than a wife. It had stripped him of understanding the woman he had loved. Emily didn't slam the door in anger. She didn't yell or cry, Kay. She simply closed it with a gentle finality. Daniel stood frozen on the steps, the truth of her independence, her brilliance, and her quiet power pressing down on him. It was a truth he couldn't escape, a realization he couldn't undo. Weeks later, Daniel would tell his friends what had happened. He would recount the shock, the disbelief, the way he felt seeing her again. Calm and untouched by the years of misunderstanding. Some of them would nod, others would laugh, but Daniel knew the real story. Emily Carter had always been more than he could ever contain. She had never depended on him, and in the end, she had shown him exactly what he had missed. And somewhere, inside him, Daniel felt a quiet a mixture of regret, awe, and something he could barely name. Emily had walked her path silently, powerfully, and unapologetically. She had created a life that belonged entirely to her, untouched by doubt or judgment. And as he walked away, frozen and humbled, Daniel understood that some people don't need saving. Some people, like Emily Carter, need only to be seen, and, even then, it may already be too late. That day marked the end of Daniel's illusions and the beginning of his understanding. Emily's quiet strength, her independence, and her brilliance were not obstacles, they were the truth he had ignored. He had left thinking he carried her life in his hands, but she had been holding her own all along. And now she was untouchable, unshakable, and completely free in the quiet aftermath. Daniel realized something that would stay with him forever. The woman he left behind had never been behind at all. She had been moving forward while he was busy measuring her by a false standard. And in that moment, frozen on her doorstep, he finally understood the cost of his blindness. Emily closed the door. And for the first time, Daniel truly saw her not as the woman he thought he knew, but as the unstoppable, brilliant, independent force she had always been. And in that silence, he realized that some losses are irreversible and some truths are unchangeable. She had never needed him. She had only ever needed herself. He turned away, carrying regret heavier than any suitcase. As Emily stepped back into her life, calm and confident, knowing that the world she had built could withstand anything, even the man who once walked out thinking he understood her, her success wasn't loud. It wasn't designed to impress. It was quiet, consistent, and powerful, the kind of life Daniel could only now appreciate, long after the chance to share it had passed. And in that realization, Daniel Carter understood fully what it meant to be left behind. By failure, but by brilliance.